Fast Eddie Felson teaches the art of hustling to a young pool player. Listen as we discuss the best legacy sequel ever, Tom Cruise's huge hair, and Paul Newman's serious mustache. Then we find out if The Color of Money stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says Gladiator with a glut. Alan says as a father, blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Test of Time. My name is Alan Noah, and the Vincent to my Fast Eddie is you, James Brief.
Thank you. I mean, I was going to say, so I'm the heartthrob, but yeah, Paul Newman was the heartthrob. So I guess we're both just two run-of-the-mill Hollywood heartthrobs running a podcast.
Yeah, and I guess I made myself the old guy when technically you're, 8-9 days older than me? Something like that?
Yeah. You're the child world to my Toys R Us, as referenced in this film.
There you go. So last week we talked about The Hustler, and today we're going to talk about The Color of Money, the sequel that came out 25 years later. This was before people were using the term Legasequel, which I think really only came into fashion, 2, 3, 4 years ago, something like that. But this is a Legasequel.
This refers to films when the sequel comes out decades later. Probably one of the most successful cases in history has to be Top Gun Maverick.
Another Tom Cruise Legasequel.
Right, yeah, another Tom Cruise. But, sometimes these Legasequels are really good, really successful. You got some Top Guns, and sometimes you get your Blues Brothers 2000, that comes out 20 years later. What are some favorites or least favorites of yours? What ones that had absolutely no right to exist, and others that, 20 years later, there was a reason to have a new sequel.
There's really only one Legasequel that I really, really, really liked, and that's Rocky Balboa. That movie was just a wonderful movie, completely on its own, but also it showed the character older in a way that was grounded and made sense and felt like it was true to the character and wasn't just a cash grab of, hey, let's just dust off this old franchise. That's really the only one that I was like, yes to this. There have been some that I didn't mind. Beetlejuice was fine. Ghostbusters: Afterlife was neat. I always like seeing Bill Murray. I'm not mad at them. I don't really think there's anyone worse than Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Not all of them are that bad, but I also don't think that any of them are as good as Rocky Balboa.
I think you might have hit the nail on the head that is probably, in my opinion, the perfect Legasequel for two reasons. One, there's a reason for this story to exist. It's not just Rocky VI. It's not just, who's he going to fight this time? Mr. T, Soviet guy, heavyweight champion of the world. It'll be a mega heavyweight champion of the world. No, he's kind of fighting his old age and his demons and trying to fight for his son's love and the demons of his wife's death. But the second reason I think that might be one of the greatest Legasequels ever is because it does something that sequels so rarely can do, which is they get another shot at it. And he was able to redeem a less than stellar Rocky V. Let's just call it less than stellar.
Right.
Stallone, too. I think Rambo 4, was just called Rambo or John Rambo.
I think just Rambo.
Maybe. And that was much better than Rambo 3. Did it need to exist? No. I liked it. I thought it was kind of a cool movie, but I wouldn't necessarily say it was an older Rambo dealing with any kind of demons. It was just, a better Rambo 2, I thought.
Yeah, he's just killing a whole bunch of people again.
Yeah, Jumanji. I thought the Jumanji sequels were actually shockingly good. They really went somewhere different, and I thought that was a lot of fun going into Jumanji. But the one I never saw that, according to the internet, I will say is the end-all be-all Lego sequel that people love is Blade Runner. I didn't see that sequel. Did you?
I did not. I didn't really care for the first one.
That's what I was going to say. The two of us weren't big fans of that one.
Right. So I didn't really have any motivation to run out and see the second one. I know that people like it, but I just really don't have any interest.
You know, Mad Max Fury Road, that's a Lego sequel that I think absolutely had a reason to exist, because basically George Miller was able to say, now that I'm a successful filmmaker, I want to make The Road Warrior with the real budget and, top A-list actors and, great special effects and score. And let me just see what I could do. So while it wasn't necessary, since I think it had already been done in Road Warrior, you liked Mad Max Fury Road, whereas you didn't like the Mel Gibson films.
I saw Fury Road once, and I remember being entertained by it. I don't really remember much about it. I don't think I was gaga over it, like I was about Rocky Balboa.
But Martin Scorsese picked this film, The Color of Money. It's not like people were screaming for a sequel to 1961's The Hustler. I would have to say most people would have probably been shocked in 1987 when it was announced that the brilliant and beloved Martin Scorsese, or rather 86, is taking on the beloved film from the 60s. Now, I should have maybe a caveat. He's absolutely beloved today. He was a well-regarded filmmaker, I'd say, in 1986.
Yeah, he had done Taxi Driver and The Last Waltz and Raging Bull, and people knew him from those movies. But this is still before The Last Temptation of Christ, before Goodfellas, before Cape Fear, before Martin Scorsese had really fully defined himself. And he also said that this wasn't a passion project for him, for Scorsese. Paul Newman approached him because Paul Newman wanted to make a sequel to The Hustler. He felt like there was more to say about the character. The Hustler was based on a book by Walter Tevis, and Walter Tevis did write a sequel book called The Color of Money, but the movie The Color of Money apparently doesn't follow the book version. When Scorsese did agree to join the project, he didn't want it to be just kind of a straight sequel. He kind of wanted to take it in a different direction. He didn't love the book version, so he had the screenwriter Richard Price write a new script, and that's what they filmed. And Scorsese has said that he does feel like this isn't really a Martin Scorsese movie, that he was kind of a hired gun for this one. It's not as personal for him.
I do have to remind myself that this is a Martin Scorsese film when I've seen it. This, I believe, is my third time seeing this film. You can't not see the Scorsese-ness in some of the in this film, in my opinion. I think it's a fast shot film. Scorsese very slick in this film.
Did you catch the oneer?
No, I didn't. I was really looking for it.
When Vincent is playing pool and he's singing along to Werewolves of London, there's a pretty long oneer there.
Oh, okay. In case you haven't seen The Color of Money, in this sequel, Fast Eddie Felson is back. He's now retired from the pool circuit, and he's working as a liquor salesman. One day, Eddie encounters Vincent, a young, cocky, and talented pool player. In Vincent, Eddie sees a chance to relive his glory days as a hustler. He takes Vincent and his girlfriend Carmen on a road trip where he teaches them the art of the hustle on their way to a pool tournament in Atlantic City. Part of the hustle is what they call dumping, when the good player deliberately loses at first so that the stakes can be raised later. Vincent, with his big brash ego, he doesn't like losing. Eddie is also inspired by Vincent to pick up pool again himself. So he does well at first, but then he gets hustled by a player named Amos. Eddie leaves Vincent and Carmen and heads to the tournament alone. There, Eddie and Vincent play each other, and Eddie wins. But Vincent was apparently a good student because he lost the game on purpose. Eddie is enraged, forfeits his spot in the tournament, and challenges Vincent to a game where they both give it their all.
Right. And how did this movie do at the box office? Did it do well like its predecessor?
Yeah, it did pretty well. This film opened on October 17th, 1986, anywhere from 10 to $14 million budget. It opened number two with $6.2 million. It couldn't beat number one. That was the number one film of 1986, Al. Do you remember what that is?
Uh
That's not a knife. That's a knife.
oh, Crocodile Dundee.
Right. So this film could knock Mick Dundee from number one, but it did
Okay.
do well. It opened at number two with $6 million, and it ended with $52 million domestically. So I think this opened people's eyes that this Marty Scorsese guy, he's an up and comer. Why don't we give him a couple bucks for that that mob film he wants to do in 1990?
Yeah, and Martin Scorsese also does the opening VO, by the way, where he's talking about Nine Ball, which is weird, and I don't think it's necessary. I mean, I generally think that about voiceover, but whatever.
I think it's very important to explain the rules of Nine Ball. It's not a very popular game. Nine Ball is also a beautiful game to shoot because it's only the first 9 balls, so you have one of every color. Once you get to 10, it starts repeating the colors again. But in 9 ball, the only point of the game is to get the 9 ball in. And you have to hit the lowest ball first. But if you can get the 9 ball in, it doesn't matter if you brilliantly get the first 8 balls in. It's only about that 9 ball. And you try to get a trick shot to get that 9 ball in. And the whole game's kind of a hustle. It only matters what you get in that 9 ball. So I liked it. I thought that was a cool opening.
I getcha. And the first word of dialogue in the movie is color. Paul Newman is talking about the color of whiskey. It's literally the first word out of his mouth. Obviously, that's a reference to the title and the fact that this movie, unlike The Hustler, is shot in color, which I think is the right move. This movie stars 1980s Tom Cruise. He is a heartthrob. I just couldn't get over how big his hair was. Oh my God. It's like 5 inches over his head. There's so much of it.
It is a high top. If you've seen Kid and Play, it's kind of the white equivalent of that hairdo. It was so high.
Yeah.
But I kind of love it. I would not necessarily have picked Tom Cruise to be the person that plays him.
Oh, yeah?
I think Cruise pulls it off. Tom Cruise is a much more versatile actor than I think he thinks he is, because I think, unfortunately, Tom Cruise plays Tom Cruise in a lot of films. And when he plays this kind of character, and I don't know if you've ever seen a movie called Collateral by Michael Mann,
No.
Tom Cruise is a better scumbag than he is a good guy. He's a fun good guy. Don't get me wrong. I think Ethan Hunt is great and Jerry Maguire is great, but Scorsese saw something in him. Let's assume Scorsese had something to do with the casting. It turns out that you need an Academy Award level person, and Tom Cruise is.
Yeah, and Tom Cruise can hold his own with Paul Newman for sure. He definitely gives off the right kind of brash arrogance where he just doesn't want to lose and he can't handle dumping, which is just the worst term ever. Also, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, she is great in this movie. She also holds her own with Tom Cruise, with Paul Newman. We saw her in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and in Scarface. Also, John Turturro is in this movie.
Yes.
Love him. It's a very small role, and I did kind of want to see his character Julian come back in a bigger way at the end. He shows up at the end, but nothing really happens with him. There's no real payoff, and I did kind of feel bad for him because Eddie just totally ditches him as soon as he sees Vincent. And I guess in the world of pool hustling, if you're the best and then you are beaten, well, then you're not the best anymore, and who cares about you? But Julian was Fast Eddie's guy, and then he just kind of was yesterday's news.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's a little bit of a Sith Lord kind of thing. Always there is a student and a master, and when it's not working out, one kills the other, and they move on to the next best thing. I love where Vincent works. I alluded to it earlier when I called you the Child World to my Toys R Us. Do you remember Child World?
No, Child World was a real place?
Oh, yeah, you don't remember. Child World, that's where it's at.
I genuinely did not know that was a real store. I thought that was just a made-for-the-movie kind of name.
Child World was usually a big kind of department store kind of area. I think they went out in like the late 80s. But I love that he worked there. That's a really great piece of exposition that Vincent is able to be a great salesman because that's a hustler. Not always. Yeah. I don't mean you always have to be, but he says the kind of stuff like, for you, I'm going to give you this discount. Hey, Tommy, knock these great guys down at 15% off. And, it just kind of felt like it was marked up 25% before he did that. Or there was some angle there that Vincent was really slick, or it just showed he's a great talker.
Yeah, and he is good at being a character, and Eddie says that to him. He says, "Oh, I have character." He says, "No, you are a character," right. Which is kind of a play on what happened in The Hustler, where they talk about character, not a character. But Vincent is good at pool, and he's good at being brash, and he's good at commanding attention, but he just can't handle the dumping. He can't handle losing on purpose, because why the fuck would he want to lose? When someone is taunting him, he just wants to win, and he wants to humiliate the person. And that is what we saw Fast Eddie do in The Hustler. That's why he gets his thumbs broken in that movie, because he can't just win. He has to be a real arrogant dickhead about it. And Vincent is that same kind of dickhead, and he would have won more money much quicker in their road trip if he knew when to just lose on purpose. That's what the hustle is.
Yeah, and this is a really interesting view for me, because I've seen this film a couple times, and I knew of the existence of The Hustler. In my mind, The Hustler was Fast Eddie versus Minnesota Fats, just as a younger guy, and that's not what the film is at all. But now I got to watch this film almost like with brand new information, and I think 80% of the acting that Paul Newman does is this mustache of his. There's this old man gravitas to him that just is like, listen to me, listen to this mustache. I mean, it's just, I know what I'm talking about. And I liked knowing now that Eddie is not some all-knowing, like the magical elderly guy that's just, you should go like this. This is how to hustle. No, I now know this is exactly the guy that Eddie was, just slightly different. Booze was his kryptonite as opposed to dumping completely and that ego. But they both had the ego problem. Fast Eddie couldn't quit Minnesota Fats, and Vincent, he just can't quit not winning. He's got to prove he's the best, even though he doesn't get the strategy.
Right. And because of that, because we see him struggle so hard when it comes to taking a dive, that does make that twist at the end more impactful when we find out that the reason Eddie beat Vincent was because Vincent took a dive. He was paying attention. He was listening to Eddie, and he did figure out that he could make more money by losing this tournament than by winning. And I think there was something that was, in a way, kind about that, where he felt like, you're an older guy and it's important for you to win this tournament, so you can have the win, I'll take the loss and make tons of money, and hey, you'll be happy. First off, I was surprised by that reveal. I didn't see that coming, and it did feel like he wasn't doing it in a mean-spirited way. Eddie is fucking pissed about it, but I did genuinely believe when Vincent and Carmen were saying, like, oh yeah, we figured you'd be so happy. I do think that they meant that.
Yeah, I do get it, but I feel like it's kind of like they both didn't understand the con. Vincent is more than just the ego. He also doesn't understand that at some points Eddie cozies up to Carmen, pretends that Carmen is his girl for the sake of the con, because they can't really know each other in the pool hall. Vincent, Tom Cruise's character, is really pissed off that Eddie is putting his hands on her leg, and because he's got to pretend that this is his girl. And in the same way, Eddie gets really distracted by his ego. He can't find out he's the best. But in the end, does he really care if he's the best?
Yeah, I think so. Based on the ending scene where he demands to play Vincent, no holds barred, we're just going to see who's better.
I'm sorry, you're absolutely right. I'm wondering, does he even care about the money? No, he doesn't care about the money because he just puts this thousands of dollars back in Vincent's pocket. And also, he's now like in the quarterfinals. All he has to do is beat like 2 or 3 more people, and he wins the tournament money. So I don't think he cares about the money, but you're absolutely right. He's got to find out if he's a champ. It's kind of like a Rocky 3 situation where, Apollo Creed and Rocky, they just got to know, no bells, no judges, who's the better fighter.
I was thinking about the end of Rocky 3 also, because like in that movie, the movie just ends. We don't see who wins, and in a way, you very much do want to know who wins, but in another way, who cares? It doesn't matter. These are 2 guys who are at the top of their game. They need to do this for their own egos, but who gives a shit?
But in another way, Al, you find out in Creed 2 that Apollo beat Rocky.
Right, I do remember he says that. But we skipped right to the end of this movie. Part of the reason why I think it's easy for us to skip to the very end of this movie is that I did feel like there wasn't a ton of plot in this movie. It's a very straightforward road trip story.
Yep.
And that's not a bad thing, don't get me wrong, but having just watched The Hustler, which was a character study, I was expecting more of that. And I guess you could make the argument that this movie is also a character study, maybe sorta kinda, but it does not go as deep as The Hustler did. And I don't think that it's trying to, and I don't think that it necessarily has to, but I was expecting more of the emotional punch just because that's what you get in The Hustler. And this movie's just, straightforward. Learning how to hustle, learning how to play pool, learning how to win. Then he wins. Then he learned the lesson, yada, yada, yada.
Absolutely. And now you see why I was so confused last week as to why The Hustler was not Minnesota Fats versus or maybe teaming up with Fast Eddie Money. These are very different films. And but you're right. I think this is more of a straight up montage of scams, and it just goes right to the tournament at the end.
So because so much of the movie is about taking a dive and pretending to lose, and that's the big twist at the end, that Vincent pretended to lose, do you think that Eddie pretended to lose when he played Amos, the Forrest Whitaker character?
There's a thought that Eddie fake lost to Amos?
Well, I don't know that that's like a theory online in, some film circles or subreddits or whatever. Maybe it is. I have no idea. When I was watching the movie, that thought did not cross my mind. I thought for sure that Amos beat Eddie. That scene where Eddie is crying and he can barely look Vincent in the eye. I mean, that is really good acting. I thought it was really good acting by Paul Newman. But then after the end of the movie where there was that twist that Vincent took a dive with Eddie, I was wondering if maybe it was Paul Newman acting as Eddie acting to Vincent and Carmen. In other words, that Eddie lost to Amos on purpose because he just wanted to go to the fucking tournament. He was done with these kids. Yeah, they're cute. Yeah, they're fun. Yeah, they're sweet. But he spent, I forget how long it was, maybe 3 weeks with them, and he just didn't want to spend another 3 weeks with them. He was just at the end of his rope. To be clear, I don't think that that's right. I don't think that the movie really makes that point. But I think that it's a valid question, just because so much of the movie is about pretending to lose, that it's a fair question to wonder.
Is he just shocked he lost to Amos? I'm not sure. But something I found interesting about both Amos and Minnesota Fats last week, both of these guys beat the living hell out of Fast Eddie. Both of them felt so bad for Eddie that the very last $200 that Eddie had that he was going to bet Fats, I think this is more at the beginning. Minnesota Fats is like, game's over, Eddie. I'm not taking that last 200. And even Forrest Whitaker's character is like, you don't have to pay me if you don't want to. I'm not sure whether he lost Amos. I don't think he threw it. I think he just got unlucky at certain points and also hustled.
I 100% think that too. Just the question popped into my mind. Right. Also, the last thing that Amos says to him before he leaves, he says, I just need to ask you one question. Do you think I could lose a little weight? That to me was just an obvious reference to Minnesota Fats.
Oh, no. I didn't think it was that at all. I thought it was a sick burn at the end. I feel like he was supposed to say something like, can I ask you a question? Does it get any better than this? Or does it feel good? Or is there ever going to be satisfaction in this? Am I ever going to be happy? I think it was such a burn that the guy is so desperate. Hey, man, one last thing. Hey, man, what do you think of me in this suit? Do I need to lose weight? Like, I think it's just such a burn. I think he's kicking him when he's down.
I thought it was just a Minnesota Fats reference. And apparently there was talk about bringing that character back in for the sequel, and Jackie Gleason was open to it. And there was a draft where they wrote Minnesota Fats back in, but it felt like he was shoehorned in, and Jackie Gleason read it and said, yeah, this is just shoehorned in. You don't need it. And apparently Scorsese agreed that it wasn't necessary, so fine.
All right. Yeah, there was one scene, I didn't quite understand what it was. There's a scene when Eddie's like, oh man, you guys got to see this place. It's the greatest thing. It's the greatest thing. And then they go and it's just, it's not what it was in the 60s or something.
Yeah, it's like a furniture store.
Yeah, was that supposed to be like the pool hall we saw in The Hustler? Or was it just something we're supposed to imply that it was just one of Eddie's old haunts?
Yeah, I think that just shows the passage of time, where Fast Eddie knew everything there was to know. He knew all the places and all the people, and this place, he gets so excited on his way up the stairs. He says he has goosebumps, that he's so excited to go to this pool hall, and then they open the door, and it's gone. And it's just the old-timer being the old-timer. And Vincent laughs a little too hard and a little too long, and Eddie's like, okay, enough, because he is genuinely embarrassed by this moment where now he just has egg on his face. The place that he knew, it's gone because he hasn't played in 25 years. So I think that's just kind of meant to be a little heartbreaking moment for him.
That's aging. And I thought if there was going to be a moment, that would have been the Minnesota Fats, or it would have been like, that's where they would reference it. And he was going to say, oh, Fats is going to be here. And then you find out he died or something like that.
Yeah. The character Orvis in this movie, he and Eddie have some history. And I thought that maybe he was from the first movie and, just kind of a small character. But no, he was not in The Hustler, that actor. I was wondering if that was supposed to be some kind of connective tissue. There's not a ton, but Eddie has retired from playing pool. He says that he hasn't picked up a pool cue in a very long time. I think he even says that someone retired him 25 years ago. Horrible stuff happened, but I don't even think about it anymore. Clearly, he does think about it still, and clearly he is excited to pick up a pool cue again. I wasn't sure if there was maybe going to be some other reference to Bert and, that threat that he wasn't allowed to play pool, that he wasn't allowed to go into a pool hall ever again. I mean, in the first movie, Bert is older, so maybe it's just understood that he died and now Eddie can do whatever he wants because who's enforcing this 25-year-old rule? Which makes sense. I just wasn't sure if they were going to talk about it more explicitly.
It would have been interesting to see even a line like, I'm afraid to walk in here. I'm not allowed to play pool in St. Louis. And then you walk in and like, no one's over 40 or 50. And like, no one would possibly have been in this pool hall in 1961 and remembered that this guy was banned. There's almost no connection to the first film.
There's enough connection, but they are very different in style and tone and story too, really.
Obviously, it's the same character, but I'm just saying, having watched these films backwards, I thought I was going to get a lot of backstory to this guy. The only backstory I did get that I really liked is knowing that he was a fuck up too. And he was kind of like Vincent. They're not father and son, but like father, like son, generational. They're going to do the same thing. And maybe even implying that a 6-year-old Vincent right now is mentoring some Generation Z kid who's a cocky little shithead, always on his TikTok, whatever, and he can't get him him to pay attention. It would be cool if Tom Cruise is willing to play the old man in a trilogy like this.
I mean, Tom Cruise isn't averse to dusting off old franchises of his, Top Gun and Mission Impossible, so why not?
Right. There would have to be a reason, again, because we've kind of seen that movie.
I think the reason is money.
And what color is it?
Probably green.
But can I ask you, speaking of which, what the fuck is up with the title of this film? I know it's the title of the novel, and maybe the novel explains it, but what the fuck?
I mean, it's not literal about the color of money, but it's about the importance of money, the pursuit of money, what you're willing to do to get money. It's like that line about money won is better than money earned. And Vincent has that job at Child World where he's probably making minimum wage, a little sales commission. And that's why Eddie says, your girlfriend's bored. She's not going to stick around with you. What she wants is real money. And so that allure, that greed is a key motivating factor in the movie. And so much of it is about doing these hustles and knowing when to take the dive, and how it doesn't matter if you beat that one guy who's really good. He's nothing. You want to go for that high roller over there. So you have to lose to that guy so that you can play that guy. That's the game. So it is very money focused. So is The Hustler. I think you could argue that The Color of Money could be the title for The Hustler, and The Hustler could be the title for The Color of Money, because I think both movies are both about hustling and greed, quite frankly.
Except The Color of Money would be black and white.
That is very true. So it would have to be the black and white of money?
Well, the answer is The Color of Money is grayscale. Yes.
That's true.
I do like the end of this film a lot better than the end of The Hustler. I think there's definitely a redemptive arc to Paul Newman, because he gets to say at the end, I'm back. I also didn't get it the first time I saw it. What the hell does that mean, I'm back? And I realize now, because he left the tournament. I remember when I first saw it, I go, quitting the tournament? No, you have to win it. I didn't get why he was just trying to play Vincent.
Although you could argue that finish out the tournament, try to win the tournament, and then challenge Vincent to a rematch, and then prove that you can beat him too, because there's not just pride in winning the tournament, but also money. But James, what do you think about The Color of Money? Do you think the movie stands the test of time?
I just like this film a lot better than the first film. I'm willing to admit that it's probably not as good a film. It's not one of Scorsese's greatest films. It's not.
No.
I've seen it 3 times, and I don't necessarily think I need to see it again for a while, but I do like it. I said it last week. Probably the only thing that kind of kept me involved in some of the boring parts is that I find watching pool, especially when it's good pool, and you know by definition this is going to be good pool, it is entertaining for me to watch, and there's a lot of cool trick shots, and I think it's a slick made film. You are absolutely right that the film is light on plot. They meet, there's a lot of hustling, and then they break up, and it's the end.
Yeah.
But Scorsese's a really good filmmaker. Cruise is a really good actor. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio she's a really good and underrated actress. Or I don't think she was underrated back then. She was widely used. I like this film better than The Hustler, but I'm not going to say like, this is the film that should have been nominated for 7 Academy Awards. No, I don't think this film should have been nominated really for any Academy Awards. It's a passable road trip film. And while it doesn't really have much of a thick plot, I think there's enough of it that keeps me entertained, and I like seeing this chapter of Fast Eddie Money. I think it's a good bookend to The Hustler.
Why do you call him Fast Eddie Money? I think you said that before too. It's just Fast Eddie.
I keep saying it because of that guy Eddie Money. I don't know why. Because of The Color of Money. I think I'm mixing all those things up. Yeah, Eddie Money was this. He was like a rock star in the 80s, right?
Yeah. I got 2 tickets to paradise.
Eddie Money. Nothing to do with this film. So yes, for me, this film does stand the test of time. What about you, Al? How about the second adventures of Fast Eddie, not money, and just The Color of Money?
I very strongly disagree with you that this movie is more entertaining than The Hustler. I was less intrigued by the story of this movie. It's A to B to C. what happens is what you think is going to happen. Yes, that twist that Vincent lost to Eddie on purpose did get me, and I will give the movie credit for that because I didn't see that coming, and that was a good twist. That was well done. But I just find this movie to not really be about the human condition in the way that The Hustler was, that I really appreciated. This movie is just, now Fast Eddie is older, and he's got a protege. Even though this movie was a legacy sequel before we had that term, this movie does feel like a run-of-the-mill legacy sequel that you would see in the 2020s, where it's the aging character passing the torch to a new generation, and the new generation makes a lot of the same mistakes as the old guy did back in the old movie. I feel like more often it's the son or daughter of the protagonist, and this time it's just a parental relationship. But I just think this movie's fairly formulaic. It's not bad. I like watching Paul Newman. I like watching Tom Cruise. I like watching Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio. By the way, Paul Newman was nominated and won the Academy Award for this movie, although it was kind of understood that he was really winning it for The Hustler and for, just being this Hollywood legend who had never won an Oscar, and he was getting older, so we better give him one now.
And that's why Scorsese won for The Departed. That's not his best film by far.
Exactly. And Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. It's an entertaining movie for sure, but I felt like it really paled in comparison to The Hustler. Honestly, I probably would have liked this movie a lot more if I hadn't just watched The Hustler last week. If that hadn't been the case, I probably would have found it to be more entertaining and really enjoyed all of the pool shots and everything. I mean, I agree with you that it is slickly made. It is very well shot. We didn't talk at all about It's in the Way That You Use It, the breakout song by Eric Clapton from the soundtrack. That's not the best Eric Clapton song, but whatever. I'm going to say that the movie does stand the test of time, but it's not amazing. It's not particularly noteworthy. It's just fine.
The Hustler is a film, which also goes to, films can be kind of boring. This is a movie. They're at different levels.
I agree. But that's going to do it for us this week. Next week, we're going to leave pool behind and talk about football. In honor of Super Bowl Sunday, we are going to watch the movie Any Given Sunday, starring Al Pacino, directed by Oliver Stone. I'm pretty sure I've only seen this movie once, but I'm excited to get into the football spirit before Super Bowl. In the meantime, we want to hear from you. We are at Test of Time Pod on Facebook, X, Instagram, and Threads. Write to us. Let us know which movie you like better, The Hustler or The Color of Money. Let us know your thoughts on pool, on hustling, on coming out of retirement, on legacy sequels, on all of these things. We love hearing from you, and we'll see you next time, everybody.
Bye.